one 20-minute talk about pensions generally, and the other one I've got for tomorrow was a 2-hour, highly technical one for financial advisors. So I hope I've got the right one today. But if not, we'll see how the first hour goes. And I can always take it on a bit further if necessary. So, all of it today, 20 minutes, there's so much I could talk about pensions. I just want to give a few thoughts, I think, and a few messages. So hopefully within the slides I've got, there will be a few serious messages about pensions. And the problem is with pensions is there's always so many questions because everyone should have or have a pension, but it's the technicalities and the changing legislation that sort of defeats most people's understanding of pensions, and we end up in this virtuous circle of asking more and more questions to get less and less information sometimes. Risk warnings everywhere. I'm not sure they thought I was going to talk about it, but new pensions regime started this April. George Osborne stood up a couple of years or so ago saying, let it be clear, no one will have to buy an annuity. Surprised most of the industry. Previously, we didn't have to buy an annuity anyway. We haven't had to buy an annuity for a good number of years. And that, we've had income drawdown applicable to pensions now for, 20 years? So to some extent, the requirement not to buy an annuity goes back quite a long way. And being a pensions geek, as I am, when the Queen's speech came on to announce pension freedoms, they were saying it's new legislation to prevent you from having to buy an annuity, I'm shouting at the television, that's not true, we haven't had to do this for several years. And my wife's shouting at me, please don't shout at the television. And she apologises to the guests. And we carried on with dinner. What's interesting is it's really been taken to heart. This concept and the phrase we've used since, and the press has taken it as pension freedoms. I'm sure people have seen that, the idea that now you don't have to buy an annuity, and there's a range of different sort of choices. I'll cover some of those choices today. But interestingly, since April, we've had all sorts of research being done saying that what a lot of people would like is, from their pension, is a guaranteed income for life, which was an annuity. So we may have even got the same effect if we just changed the word annuity to something different. And I still do think annuities should form part of the sort of the kit bag for retirement. Annuities give certainty and give you an income for as long as you live, and that's quite an important part of taking out some of the investment risk and buying a level of income that you can rely on. There are other attractions and other flexibilities around it. Now, for those of you who may have seen this before, I do always go back to check on what the newspapers say about pensions. And I don't know if people know, but there's a website, or it was a website called Daily Express Bingo. And the Daily Express has 5 or 6 topics that it likes to return to virtually every couple of weeks. And pensions happens to be one of them. So you can guarantee the Daily Express will have a pensions headline in it. Other ones will be the weather, the royal family, how we don't like foreigners, how we don't like Europe. All of these are the sort of the Daily Express headlines. But I always like to go and see what the Daily Express says about the new rules. So pension cash-in boosts Britain. So a positive view perhaps for a change. And also a dog that cheated, which is always good. The Daily Mail, however, same subject, pensions shake up shambles. So we're not quite sure yet where we want to go. Now I have to be very careful of this one because David Cameron with a farm animal again. Now, I didn't see this one when I picked the slide. That a picture of David Cameron with a sheep. So I did wonder whether I should use that one, but it just shows the difference I think that the Daily Express and the Daily Mail. Now I'm not a Daily Express reader. I just see the Daily Express headlines on the way to buy my Daily Mail. Now, I did that line the other week, and no one laughed. And I thought, excuse me, as I get older, am I becoming a Daily Mail reader? But it just shows, I think, that that we're still hearing the noise, I guess, about what's happening with the change to the rules. I think this year the noise will be around what's happening with regard to pensions advice, with regard to pension freedoms. Next year, I think, we'll get through that noise and we'll start listening and sitting down and thinking what Russ, I think, is going to start talking about later, which is investment strategies and how to invest your pension to actually achieve the goals and objectives that you want in retirement. Daily Express again, pensions and savings joy for all. I think that's where we'd like to get to, I think. I think getting there, we need to take into account the various objectives about what people want from their pensions. And for me, pensions is all right about having your own plan, basically, having your own blueprint for what you want to achieve in retirement. We'll come back to that a bit later. that's what it started, freedom and choice in pensions. Surprised everybody. The industry perhaps has taken a bit of time to catch up with it. George Osborne did, when he announced it at his budget a couple of years ago, haven't really mentioned it to the industry. It took a bit of time to get things moving. But I think it's starting to set down now. Now, Steve Webb, the previous pensions minister, got saddled with this idea of being the Lamborghini minister. And it was reported to have said, well, I don't mind if we all cash in all your pension fund and buy a Lamborghini. That's up to you if you want to live on state benefits. I'm not sure we totally said that. And my experience so far, I haven't yet had it. As I ask people, as I'm travelling around the country, I ask people what they've had stories about people spending their pension money on. I've had a Porsche, not had a Ferrari yet. I did have one guy who said one of their clients had taken out his pension money and bought himself a Thai bride, which I thought was an interesting... at the other end of the scale, I had a nurse who'd taken out some of her AVC policies from her pension scheme and bought her granddaughter a pony. So you can see, that's the nice fluffy bit, isn't it? You know? So people are spending different amounts on different things. And I sort of divide, sort of the profile of pensions, so it's very much a threefold, I think. For those people with small pension funds, perhaps 50, 60, 70,000 pounds, why wouldn't you cash it in and use it? I think it comes down to utility, what you get from it. Other than that, if you do need your pension plan to put together a lifestyle to which you'd like to become accustomed, to me that's the strategy bit. That's where you need to start thinking about how much income you're going to need, how long you're likely to live, and build in some of those factors into that blueprint for what you'd like to achieve. Speedboats, cruises and holiday homes on pensioners' shopping lists. And just before last Christmas, this time last year I think it was, the Sunday Times had a supplement about holidays for your pension splurge. And so I think there's very much has been a degree of opportunist advertising, looking at people are going to have more money in their hands. What will they spend those money on? And there's been reports of Steve Webb at a conference the other week was talking about people spending on conservatories. There's been holidays, there's been cars, there's been paying off debt. There's been a whole raft of different issues and different objectives that people have had for their pension money. And I guess from a perspective of pension freedoms, that can't be a bad thing, can it? If people are able to, as long as they know what they're letting themselves into as to what they're achieving with their pension money. What's happened in the first 6 months or so? We may not be able to see the detail, but there'll be a copy of the slides. But 71,000 people have accessed some form of income drawdown option. 120,000 consumers have accessed some form of cash withdrawal. So you can see these figures aren't going to mean much perhaps until we get to the end of the year, look back and see what sort of experience we've had. And to me, they don't really mean much without some degree of satisfaction as to whether what people achieved in accessing their pension money, was it the right thing for them to do? What would they have done if they hadn't done that? So I think we need to take all the statistics, these are from the FCA, with a pinch of salt until we get some sort of more substance around them. And whatever we do, always bear in mind these two, because they're always the ultimate beneficiaries of us spending money. And the tax take already has been quite significant with regard to tax from the Exchequer of people taking money out and cashing in their pensions. In the past, people would have used their pension money perhaps to have bought an annuity, and the tax take would have been spread over the rest of their lifetime. Now it's taken at the point of encashment. So what is retirement these days? Well, I think gone are the days when retirement was just packing up work and your pension was your salary after working. And I think retirement and the role of the ageing society, the role of the ageing consumer is a whole lot more important, and there's a lot of work being done about changing work patterns, the fact that retirement is about bequests, is about travelling, is about carrying on working, and statistics about well-being in retirement I think are important. But it's just now I think the flexibility that we've now got bends itself more towards the flexibility of what the concept of retirement is all about. But you're still at this age, you can't draw your pension money until you're 55 at the earliest. So it's still got that sort of slight point about pension money is for the future. You can't take it out before 55. Consequently, last time I still looked, there were some good tax reliefs available for pension. Watch this space when we get to the autumn statement, and looking forwards at the future of higher rate tax relief and tax relief generally on pensions. What do consumers want? Well, the various research suggested that people didn't want the inflexibility of annuities. They wanted access to funds. They wanted to dip into their pension when they needed it. Perhaps they wanted more money in the early years of retirement. The early years of retirement, perhaps when you go on holiday, you visit relatives, there's supposedly a U-shaped curve of retirement where people spend more in the early days, then settle into a spending pattern, and then perhaps in later days, when long-term care perhaps or care issues come along, their income goes up again. So there's much more ability to vary your pattern of spending towards to what individual needs are. Certainty of covering basic living costs, security of not running out of money, and the flexibility to change if circumstances change. I think that was almost the blueprint of what the new pension regime is trying to achieve. So what can you do now? Well, you can take a lump sum with the first 25% tax-free and the rest taxed. And in the jargon we often have in our industry, uncrystallised funds pension lump sum. You can go into drawdown, take a lump sum of 25% tax-free, and as little or as much as you want on an income basis. So you could take your whole fund out if you wanted to, or you can try and spread it and manage it and invest it across what you expect your longevity period to be. Or you can still buy an annuity, and that gives you your guaranteed income for life without the need to be worrying perhaps about investment risk. For me, the solution's probably, for many people, a combination of these. Should you take it out? Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And there are lots. One of the concerning aspects of the new pension freedoms has been the growth in the number of pension scams. People coming along and offering offers that, the old phrase, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. And people with cash in hand can be very vulnerable sometimes to some of these pension scams. So should you take it out? Well, first question to me is, why would you want to take it out? And I've had some people saying, well, Mike, we'll take it out and invest it into this. Well, so you're going to take it out of something which was tax efficient, pay tax on it, and invest it back into the same vehicles that you could have invested it in under the pension scheme? I'm not sure I quite get that one. So it's really just, it's an educational process here, getting people to understand the tax implications of, pension fund's pretty safe generally. It's going to be in the pension fund. As soon as you take it out, you could be subject to tax. So why not leave it in the tax wrapper and work around that? I have sort of five golden rules. Don't take it out if you don't know what to do with it. Don't take it out if you want to invest in something you could have invested in through the scheme. Understand the tax. I had an example the other week. I was speaking to a guy who said, well, a financial advisor, one of his clients had come in and said, well, the guy wanted to take out a net £300,000 to buy his son a flat at the university. I said, we worked through the tax implications of him taking out £300,000 net, and in the end he went and got a mortgage for the money because the amount of tax that he would have paid on that was significant. If unsure, seek professional advice, and obviously there is this PensionWise website set up by the government. George Osborne did announce everyone would have the ability to get some free face-to-face guidance, and they will give what appears to be pretty good. They will point you in the right direction. They will ask you some questions, give you a bit of a decision tree with regard to what you want with regard to spending and security and family issues. So I think there's a whole raft of issues and advice out there. But I think there's some golden rules and making sure you understand what you're doing before you get to that point. Risks, well, that was the first list of risks I could come up with. I know Russ is going to pick on several of those, but I never quite knew there were so many till I started. But you've got market risk, allocation, etc., etc. But there's a whole raft of risks about your money, and some of them are real risks, some of them are the flip side of some of the other risks. But it's important just to at least understand some of the issues that could affect how you're choosing to invest your money for retirement. And the FSA, as they were then, very importantly, this is it says assessing suitability. But the key thing for me was these two words. It's not just the risks that an individual is willing to take. Willing to take could be quite easily influenced, perhaps, but it's able to take as well. That able is a key word for me. It's about that individual capacity for loss. If you say, I cannot live on anything less than £20,000 a year, how strongly can you not live on anything less than £20,000 a year? Could you live on 19? Is it really 21? It's really assessing that ability along with the willingness to take those risks. Have a plan, I think, is the key thing for me. I've very much come back to this idea of a blueprint taking you through, looking at your circumstances, the concepts of liability-driven investment almost. I know that in 10 years my daughter will go to university. I know that when she leaves university, hopefully I need to buy her a car. Having that liability pattern with some sort of cash flow management going forwards, I think, should give you a chance to assess what income, what risk you need to take, and therefore, consequently, what investment portfolio you need to put together. That's the fear, I think, of some people. I'm going to retire and live on my savings. What I'll do the second day, I have no idea, which I quite liked. And to me, this is a start almost of putting that blueprint together. What's your minimum income floor? What's your higher initial? Some of this may be influenced by inflation. Do you want to leave a bequest to inheritance to kids or family? They're trying to put together a profile of what you want to achieve, and that profile could take many more complicated forms than this. But I think that's almost a starting point. The big issue for me is longevity. The one thing you can't forecast is the day you're going to die, is it? And I was at a conference today, and someone was mentioning the ideal with all this cash flow modelling and all this is almost that you write your last cheque on the day before you die, and it bounces. Which I sort of quite like that concept. That sort of worked for me. Obviously, if you've got your plan for passing it to the kids, it's slightly different. But more and more people are living to older ages, and I can see in the future there'll be so many that it won't so much be a telegram from the Queen, it'll just be a quick text message, won't it? I did like that quote from Bob Monkhouse. I can still enjoy sex at 74. I live at 75, so it's no distance. That was my favourite one. I'm very conscious of putting that one in, but I can. But just looking at these were some of the figures released earlier this year from the National Life Tables, just showing how people's life expectancy has increased over the years, and in some cohorts it's still increasing, albeit some slowing down. But going back to what I was saying, look at the people aged centenarians. In 2004, 8,500. 2014, 14,500. And that is increasing a lot. And society will be changing with regard to the number of dependency ratios, how many taxpayers there are supporting people who have retired. At the moment, I think it's something like 6. Forecast to go down to 2 in the future. So I think the whole profile of society revolves around these changing demographics. And longer life expectancy can prove expensive. If you're looking to put together a pension fund that's going to last you to your age 90 or 100 or whatever, then you need to start early, but have some sort of indication of what it's going to provide for you. Just as an indication, the lifetime allowance in pensions, another subject I could have spoken about today, is coming down to £1 million from next April. And £1 million, if you went and bought an annuity, escalating annuity, I think a joint life annuity would buy you about £25,000. So that gives you an indication, if you're looking at what size pension fund you'll need to buy a level of income, that gives you an indication of what you need to put away and how the power of compounding to get there. And life expectancy, let's not forget, we have all these figures about life expectancy. Life expectancy is only an average. For those people that meet the average, and those people that don't. So, there's a chance, life expectancy might be 24 years, the chance of living beyond it is 55%. I think, again, this cash flow management and planning beyond the age of life expectancy is important. Then we come to tax. I won't go too deeply into tax because obviously individual circumstances dictate. But under the new rules, you can take all your funds out, but if it takes you into a higher rate of tax, you'll be taxed at your marginal rate. So you need to make sure that you're aware of the tax. And if you're going to spread out, perhaps taking a withdrawal over a number of years, you'll get that same number of years tax allowances. So just a bit of tax planning to some extent. Then on to investments, I think. Investment risk. And I look at investment risk, well, it's willingness, ability and need. And in the middle, you get some real, true, perhaps client risk investment profile. And that's really where you need to be happy with what you're undertaking with regard to what your blueprint says. Capacity for loss is interesting, is important. Just to make sure you maybe say you have a risk profile, but what do you really think about losing money? What happens if you do lose money? Do you have a capacity for loss? And this is much more where I think some of the arguments are going, and perhaps Russ will pick up on some of this a bit later. And we are moving, I think, as I say. I think this year the noise will die down on the pension freedoms, and the big story in the next few years will be looking at individual investment profiles. This was taken from, I think, particularly an American idea of modern retirement theory, looking at sort of the MRT, modern retirement theory hierarchical pyramid. Invest your base fund for your day-to-day costs, have a contingency fund, perhaps you have a discretionary fund for holidays and replacing things from the house and all that, and a legacy fund. Perhaps you then pass that on to your children and grandchildren, and you invest accordingly. And very much, I think, the American theories is, which we tend not to do sometimes, is rather than investing to get the highest rate of return, it's working out the rate of return you need to achieve for each of those particular goals, and then building your investment portfolio in accordance with your needs, rather than, the key point is, are you going to be happy with what you achieve? There's no point in investing sort of adventurously but never being quite happy with the portfolio that you've got. I'll skip quickly, I've noticed only a minute left. But alternative, whilst we must talk about pensions as providing pension benefits, don't forget these days they are tax efficient, they are IHT efficient, and for a lot of people the idea of passing the money down the generations in a tax efficient way. I was at a conference recently, Ros Altman, the new pensions minister, was saying, spend your ISAs, spend your house, but your pension is one of the most IHT efficient ways of passing money on down the generations, and perhaps that may be something to look at in the future. The key question for me, will your pension pot last as long as you will, if you need it to, in your blueprint? My final thoughts, really, you could live to 90. I think that's given from the longevity figures we've seen. You might well want to retire at 60. You may get a flat rate state pension from 67, perhaps, or age 70 in the future, if it still exists. So that's the gap you need to fill, and that's really, for me, if you take away one message, I think it's that longevity versus the declining state provision versus the lifestyle to which you'd like to become accustomed. And on that note, thank you very much for your time. Pension power to the people.